a funny thing happened this week. A member of the congregation was cleaning out the library, and she brought me one of the books from her library. She said, "I think you'd really enjoy this book." It was a book on how to preach a sermon. Yeah, I had the same reaction. But as I looked into the book happened to have been an incredible book by Jacob Zahalone, a 17th century Italian preacher who was trying to combat the influences of Shabtai Tzvi, and he was trying to teach people how to give sermons that would combat that. It's a fascinating book, but it reminded me of a story of a guy who gets this great promotion to become a manager in this big business. And he's so excited. He moves into his new office, and he sits down at his desk. He's so proud of himself, of this extraordinary accomplishment. And there's a knock at the door. So he wants to make sure that the people who are now working under him will know how important he is. So he immediately picks up the phone and waves the person in. And he says, on the phone, he says, yes, I'll have that quarterly projection on your desk in the morning. And please tell the CEO I can handle this project. He hangs up the phone and he turns to the person who's standing there and he says, "Now, what can I do for you?" And he says, "I'm here to connect your phone." Turns out, I'm not the only one who needs to be taken down a peg. But power has a way of making us forget who we are. Parshat Behar speaks directly to that human tendency. In a section that deals with poverty and debt and servitude, the Torah draws a firm and radical line. Ki li b'nei Yisrael avadim avadai heim. All right, now who's doing it to me? For the children of Israel are my servants. The Torah says specifically that God is in charge, not other human beings. At first glance, it sounds like a theological statement, but in actuality, the Torah is proposing a social revolution. Now, you and I both know that we pick the verses in the Torah that we like. We pick the verses in the Torah that speak to exactly what the point is we want to make. There's a fantastic book by Esau McNally called Reading While Black, in which he points out all the verses in the Torah that protect servitude. He picks out all the verses from the Bible that say that people should be enslaved. He writes this book in opposition to those who use the Bible for their own purposes, to make the point they want to make. And so I guess I do the same thing today, because I think the Torah is rejecting the idea of slavery entirely. Because the Torah in totality is saying to us that no human being can ever be owned in an absolute way by another human being. Not economically, not socially, certainly not spiritually. Even when someone falls into hardship, even when somebody has to work for someone else, they should never be reduced to being just an object. They always remain Avdei Elohim, servants of the Almighty. And that means their dignity is non-negotiable. Rashi sharpens this point when he teaches Avdeihem velo avadim. They are my servants, not slaves, not servants to people. In other words, if we belong to God, then no one else can claim power over us. Any system that strips a person of their humanity degrades and humiliates. And it's not just unethical. It's a violation of something sacred. The Sfat Emet takes this even deeper. He suggests this isn't only about how we treat each other, but it's also about how we treat ourselves. To be a servant of God is not a limitation, it is the source of our freedom. Because when our ultimate allegiance is to God, to something higher, then we're no longer subject to shifting hierarchies of power around us. No boss, no system, no moment of limitation can take away our dignity. Says the Svat Emet, you have to believe that in your soul. It's a take, you should know. Love your neighbor as yourself. You can only love your neighbor once you love yourself. Think about how radical that is. For the ancient world, through to today, power seems to be everything. If you have power and you use it, if you don't, you suffer. That seems to be the way we work in our world. But the Torah interrupts that logic. It says, yes, there will be hierarchies. Yes, there will be moments when one person depends on another. But even there, even then, at our lowest point, a person can't just be a laborer. People can never just be a number. No one should ever just be a role. Stop having that be your first question when you're at a dinner party. What do you do for a living? Each one of us is a soul, a neshama. And if we are souls, then how we treat each other becomes not a measure of our power, but a measure of our humanity. Not a measure of our authority, but a measure of our kindness. This isn't just about ancient servitude. It's about every place where power shows up in our lives. It's about how employees are treated by their employers. It's about how we speak to people in moments when we seem or think we have the upper hand. It's about the quiet decisions when no one's watching, about whether we will pursue power in our lives or diminish it. Because power by itself means nothing. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can assert control. Anyone can make themselves feel important at someone else's expense. The real question is, what do we do with power when we have it? In sports, if a person completely dominates in competition, it's said that they owned them. Do you remember that person in front of you is not yours? Do you remember that the answer to the same God as you do? Do you remember that their dignity is as infinite as yours? Kivod habriot. That's the word we use. Dignity for all human beings, for all God's creation. Everybody deserves a little kavod, a little honor. The Torah's answer is clear. If you forget that you have already misused your power, the Torah tells us you can go back. Remember, if you hold power with humility, with strength, with deep awareness of another person's humanity, then something extraordinary happens. Power becomes not a tool for control, but a vehicle for dignity. Not a way to dominate, not a way to overwhelm, but a way to protect. Not a reflection of ego, but a reflection of God. And maybe that's the quiet message of this week's Parsha. That the truest test of society is not how it treats the powerful, but how it treats the vulnerable. And the true test of a person is not whether they have power, but whether we know our own limits. Because in the end, we are all Avdei Hashem. We're all servants of the Almighty. Servants of something greater. Bearers of a dignity that cannot be taken, only honored or ignored. And the choice of which is ours, well, that's the choice you have to make. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Musaf. It's introduced by the Chatzi Kaddish, page 184. Please rise.